Well, Britain's Prime Minister Theresa May is condemning a van attack outside of a London mosque overnight. At least one person is dead. Joining us now, National Security Analyst for the Clarion Project, Ryan Mauro. Ryan, thanks a lot.
Sure.
You know, again, when you first hear the news, my son came into my bedroom last night, said there was another attack. He goes to college in London, and my thought was, he said, outside of a mosque, was that it was a radical Islamic, jihadist, self-radicalized, quote, person, but that wasn't the story at all. It was turned out to be a 48-year-old white male who said he wanted to harm Muslims. I mean, is London an example of what's happening, could happen in all of the West, with everything going up in flames?
Oh, yes. I mean, if you look at the political rhetoric just coming from different angles, you're seeing it all heightened, just lots of extremism, and I've provided lots of intelligence to the authorities on threats to Muslims. And so I hate to say it, I wasn't particularly surprised by this attack. But what really troubles me is, and I mentioned this on this show a few weeks ago, is that ISIS has an actual plan where they said part of the reason that we carry out attacks in the West, especially in Europe, is because we want to have anti-Muslim reprisals just like this. And they have a name of the plan. I'm holding it right here. It's called the extinction of the gray zone. And what that meant is that in the gray zone there are radical Muslims who have not joined ISIS but aren't loyal to the West, and they felt that triggering attacks like just happened is the way to win those people over into joining their forces.
Would these often be people who were born in these Western countries but have grown up with some sense of resentment, probably that started from the home, maybe a parent or an uncle who always resented the fact that they didn't feel like they were respected here, despite the fact that they probably were refugees from some nation and we saved their lives as a nation, they still carry this resentment, and the kid grows up with that and they just need a trigger to turn it all on?
Right. Well, the gray zone that ISIS feels that they still have a chance at recruiting through these types of, provoking these types of attacks would be people that are more Islamist in nature. So they have a more theocratic mindset, an anti-democratic mindset, not necessarily coming from overseas and then coming into Europe or the United States, because you see high levels of extremism among those that are born here. That's one of the most frightening trends that I see, is that it's not just about foreigners coming. In fact, there's been studies that have shown that the levels of extremism are less among people that come here, but then those that are born in Europe or the United States have higher levels of extremism.
It's just shocking. It's sad. It's crazy that they feel this way. I want to ask you another one. An Afghan soldier wounded at least 7 U.S. soldiers in an attack at a base this weekend. It was the second insider attack for the week, and this comes as the Pentagon now, reportedly, there are reports out there, we may send up to 4,000 troops, more troops into that country. Will these additional troops make a difference? Or will these sort of things, or should we be honest about the idea of ever being able to prevent these sort of attacks?
Oh, you're not going to be able to prevent all of them, especially in a place like Afghanistan. But 4,000 will make a difference because you've had military officials throwing that number around for months now. It's very possible we're going to need more than that. But to make an immediate impact, I think that's very good. And it also sends a signal that we're not just going to ditch Afghanistan, because there's still, even under President Trump, a sense among Afghans and people in the Middle East that we don't want to be involved in these protracted conflicts like Afghanistan, so we're just going to leave. And that would lead Afghans to say, well, I've got to do something so that the Taliban doesn't chop my head off.
Well, these 4,000 apparently are going to help train, right? We're sending them, for the most part, to be, if they go, they would be training the Afghan forces. Of course, we've been doing this for a very, very long time, but this would be a critical stage toward an eventual exit strategy, right?
Well, the big component that's missing, and I haven't seen any strategy put forth for this, is how to contend with particularly Pakistan, but also Iran and possible Russian support to the Taliban that's actually happening now, but especially Pakistan, because you have a lot of groups, not just the Taliban, but the Haqqani network and various other extremist groups, and they're all interconnected. You can't just pick out one and say, well, we're at war with the Taliban. They all have a common infrastructure, and they thrive from Pakistan.
Before I let you go, there has been talk of a realization that the Taliban won't go away, but bringing them to the table as some form of a coalition government. Could that ever work?
No, because the beliefs that they have mandate waging jihad, and they believe, just like ISIS does, that that's your ticket to paradise. That's how you cleanse yourself of sin, and that's never going to away just because you involve them in the government.
Ryan, thanks a lot. Good stuff and good article. Thank you very much. Appreciate it.